Once upon a time, long story short, I was a controller movement monkey. I was completely confident in my skills as a controller player. I had never played any other game on MNK in my life, and I was good. At least so I thought I was good. What happens when you take away the one thing that every controller movement player loves? That's right, one day, Respawn took it away. The one thing I had going for me in my gameplay. I was worried because I knew that controller tap strafing was a big part of my playstyle, and not being able to do that on controller anymore forced me to do the unthinkable for the first time in my entire life. I decided to switch to MNK. This was probably one of the most challenging decisions I've ever made because I tried to do it in the past, but I always just gave up on it because it was just too hard. Until I was left with a decision to make. Take the blue pill or take the red pill. Tap strafe or no tap strafe. And so I took the pill, and everything I once knew was about to be completely changed. After waking up feeling motivated to tell myself what a breeze this was going to be, I was humbled very fast. I noticed some extreme small mistakes that I was making and how I just wasn't used to using the keys. My biggest problem was constantly misclicking the keys, and I was making the dumbest mistakes. I was missing every single PK shot, every wingman shot, I couldn't track anyone at close range, and all in all, I was worried. I was scared that I wasn't going to get good in enough time. I knew how terrible I was. That is until I spoke to a friend of mine, BOTSPIKE, easily the most insane Wattson player I personally have ever seen. After seeing so many good players on MNK, I realized just exactly how much work I have to do in such a short period of time. Right after I spoke to BOTSPIKE, he recommended I use Kovacs. But once I started on Kovacs, I immediately started to see the potential I had starting to slowly increase. And all I really had to do was just train. I spent hours a day just training in Kovacs. Well, more like an hour a day, but there is a secret that I don't see a lot of people actually talking about that will dramatically impact the way you train and help make the climb to an MNK movement monkey even better. The problem is with aim training, despite whatever scenarios you might train that imitate what you would experience when you play Apex, nothing actually beats playing the game itself and training every day in the game. And no, I'm not talking about the firing range, as good as it may be for training, no. I am talking about R5 Reloaded. Modded Apex, in other words. And for those of you who don't know, yes, there is a version of Apex that was specifically made for players and creators to let their imaginations run wild. I'm pretty sure we all remember those crazy videos we saw from Skeptation back in the day. R5 Reloaded comes with so many different training modes you can use to become better at Apex, and the best part is, it is Apex. They have a movement course, 1v1 arenas, and of course a flow state aim trainer. You can also customize your loadout to what you want so you can use it in the aim trainer with the specific weapons you want. And so boys, the training montage begins. I had found a really good routine to train on the daily. I would train for an hour in Kovacs, an hour of R5, 30 minutes in the range, 2 games of mixtape, and 2 to 3 hours of battle royale after training. However, even though I had the perfect training routine, there was one thing I did every single day that people extremely underestimate, and that is 1v1s. Now I know a lot of you guys watching are solo queue players, which is fine. You can join my Discord server and find people to train with and play with in there, or you could use R5 Reloaded and use their 1v1 arena. It will put you with another random player to 1v1 against. 1v1 training is an extremely good way for you to hone down on your skills and show them off as well.
I suck, I'm sorry. Why do I suck? This bad. This one! She's one! Oh, that is! Bro, that makes 2 of us, Brody. Oh, no.
I would spend 30 minutes in R5 just 1v1ing and still go back into Apex and 1v1 my friends in the range. And so with that, for the 15 days after the first 2 days, I focused on only training 3 things: aim, movement, and game sense. Now of course, becoming a more mechanically skilled player on MNK just requires you to keep on playing the game and learning from your mistakes, as is with training everything else. But with the clock ticking, I knew I had little time to seriously hone down on my skills here, so I decided to change things around a bit. Each day of training was dedicated to one specific area. Monday would be dedicated to training aim, Tuesday would be dedicated to training movement, and Wednesday would be dedicated to training game sense, which really just took a lot of 1v1s and actually just playing the game to improve. But as much as I was improving, I still wasn't great. And honestly, I started to get extremely demotivated. I was still dying a lot, still missing shots, and my movement was really just mid and subpar. So I actually plugged in the controller one day on the verge of giving up, which was actually a huge mistake and almost set me back. The moment I used controller, I immediately noticed I was dog shit. How? I've used this thing my whole life, but what I didn't realize was for those 18 days I had focused completely on MNK. I never touched a controller whatsoever, and so my cognitive ability wasn't adjusted to using a controller again. So there was basically no point in switching back. I just stuck with it and I kept on training. I couldn't give up. To train my aim, I would focus on the following: tracking, flicking, target switching, long range tracking, close range tracking, and of course, recoil control. Now, this is where R5 Reloaded once again became my best friend. In the training menu, there is a plethora of training modules for you to choose from, and obviously you'd need to train all of them consistently. However, I started to focus more on what I knew that I was bad at. So, here's what I trained in R5 Reloaded: strafing dummy, target switching, floating target, popcorn targets, tile frenzy, and running targets. I immediately started to notice how much more consistent my shots were becoming in games. I was tracking better, I was flicking better, and I wasn't hitting for 9 with the PK every single time. I did, however, take note that I started using shotguns way more than I usually did, because my close range consistency was improving to the point where I was confident with my shots. I was slowly but surely taking the steps to becoming a better MNK player. My favorite part of training was, of course, movement. Imagine having aim but no movement. Ew. Going back over to the controller movement guide I made a while ago, I had to learn everything from scratch, right back down to the basics. But in the process, I even started to learn new things I didn't even know I could do on controller. After I got down the basics, like understanding how much velocity I needed to perform most of the movement tech in the game, understanding crouch sliding, I went on to perfect my wall bouncing, which is usually broken down into quite a few categories. Erased actually made an absolutely amazing video breaking down everything in perfect detail about wall bouncing. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to watch that. But for me personally, I knew I needed to focus on the basics: wall bouncing, wall running, zipline dancing, super jumps, and super gliding. Now, of course, the list of movement tech for Apex Legends is a massive one, and I'm not going out of my way to crunch all of these in at the last minute. The priority here was just to focus on the movement I knew I was going to use, as well as the movement tech I knew I would use as second nature in game. And sure enough, the grinding was slowly starting to pay off. I noticed my misclicking habits started to become more consistently precise, and I started to make less and less mistakes when I took fights. But the one movement tech that I learned that I was extremely proud about, which I didn't even know I could do on controller this consistently, is mantle jumping. When I was on controller, it was actually significantly harder to pull off on MNK, especially because I could just bind jump to scroll wheel up. And now, it is probably one of the most satisfying movement techs to pull off. Fast forward a few days of training, as per the usual, I find myself still lacking in one specific area. The aim was decent, and so was the movement. However, I was still making dumb decisions and taking fights. Sometimes I would overpeak, take a fight I shouldn't have, and even still misclicking every now and then. This is where I knew my game sense was not what it needed to be. And with just a few days left on the clock to become the ultimate movement monkey tryhard sweatball, I seriously needed to grind. And Honestly, all that really took was just playing the game more and more. And of course, also the 1v1s will play a huge role in this area, because most of the mistakes that you make in a fight, you make in 1v1s too. Clip review your gameplay when you're 1v1ing in R5 and review your mistakes. Ask your friends to criticize your game skill when you 1v1 them too. Play more and more BR instead of mixtape, because the problem with mixtape is there are certain gameplay changes in there with the game modes that just isn't the same as BR. For instance, death boxes. If you don't play enough BR to get better at understanding these rules, then just like me and many others who have made this mistake, you will quickly find yourself not knowing why the death box isn't closing no matter what key on the keyboard you press. And to the current day, after all that training, failing, demotivation, and sheer discipline to achieve this goal, I can say that I'm definitely better than what I used to be. Of course, there's always more room for improvement. I definitely still misclick every now and then, but it's not all that bad. And now boys, with that being said,
we finally rest and watch the sunrise of the grateful universe. The hardest choices require the strongest will.